My uncle owns this seasonal cabin business tucked up near a frozen lake in northern Minnesota. In the winter, he only keeps 3 cabins open for the diehards, snowmobilers and ice fishers who actually enjoy being out in sub-zero temperatures. That year, he was heading down to visit his daughter in Iowa over Christmas and asked if I could watch the place for a few days. Basically, I'd be house sitting on a commercial scale. My job was to make sure the heat stayed on, monitor the water line so nothing froze up, and keep an eye on the cabins from the main lodge where I'd be staying. There was a snowplow guy on standby. Guests let themselves in with key codes, and the fridge in the lodge was already stocked. In return, I'd get $500 and a whole place to myself for a quiet holiday. Honestly, it sounded like the easiest money I'd ever make. Christmas Eve, things were low-key. 2 of the cabins were booked. A couple in their 50s who waved politely and kept to themselves. And 2 guys I didn't actually see after check-in. I made dinner out of whatever leftovers were already in the freezer, half-watched a movie, and passed out around 10. That changed just after midnight. I woke up to this knock. Not loud, not desperate. It was this weirdly even rhythmic knock, like someone was gently tapping to avoid making a fuss. It came from the back door of the lodge. At first, I just laid there in the dark, thinking maybe I dreamt it. Then it came again. Same steady rhythm, not urgent, just patient. Here's the thing. No one has any reason to go around to the back of the lodge. The front is where the driveway and porch are. The back just opens into the woods. No lights, no walkway, just a narrow clearing and the pump shed half buried in snow. And this wasn't a place where people randomly wandered at night. I got up, pulled on boots, and walked down the hallway. I didn't bother with the light. There was enough moonlight coming through the windows to see the snow outside, making everything glow just a little. And then it knocked a 3rd time, still that same soft, controlled tapping. No rush, no aggression. I didn't open the door. I stood just beside it and said, "Can I help you?" Nothing. No reply, no footsteps, just silence that I unlocked the deadbolt and leaned toward the skinny vertical window next to the frame. The kind that lets you see who's outside if you're tall enough. No one, just trees. Snow, no prints, no tracks, not even disturbed powder. I stood there listening for maybe half a minute, then locked the door again and went back to bed, and for a little while it was quiet. Then I heard something else. It started with a groan from the hallway pipes, which didn't seem unusual. Old place freezing temperatures pipes do that. But then I heard a click, very quiet, deliberate, the kind of sound a latch makes when a door is closed carefully, like someone didn't want to wake the house. It didn't come from the back door. I'd know if that had opened it came from inside. There's this narrow utility closet in the hallway, just a simple door with a stiff, clunky metal latch that makes a very specific sound when it clicks shut. I'd walked past it earlier in the evening. It had definitely been closed. Now I was almost sure that's where the sound had come from. I stayed frozen in bed, breathing as quietly as I could, listening. Eventually I made myself get up. I turned on every light, walked through the whole place. Kitchen, storage, upstairs, even the crawl space entrance, nothing. The closet door shut tight. I opened it, empty. Just a water filter tank and some extra hoses, nothing out of place. Both front and back doors were locked. I checked all the windows. There weren't even any marks in the snow around the cabin. It looked untouched. Still, I didn't go back to sleep. The next morning felt almost disappointingly normal, that I cruised by the 2 cabins on the snowmobile, waved at the couple who were out stoking their firewood pile. Sun was out. Birds were actually chirping. For a moment, it was like nothing had happened. I tried to brush the whole thing off. Maybe the knocks were from a tree branch caught in the wind. Maybe the pipes groaned louder than usual, and my brain filled in the rest. Stress, lack of sleep, whatever. I made food, watched the snow, let my phone die and didn't bother charging it. I tried to let it all fade into the background. That night, I went to bed early again, but I kept a flashlight on the nightstand this time. At exactly 1:23 in the morning, I heard it again, but not a knock. This time it was a scrape. Something dragged across the back door, slow and gritty. It made this awful sound like metal or wood sliding across ice. It lasted 5 seconds, then nothing. I didn't move, just sat up in bed, holding my breath again. A few seconds later, another scrape, shorter this time, higher up on the door. That's when I got out of bed, grabbed the flashlight, crept down the hallway, trying not to make noise, but failing completely because the floors creaked like crazy. I stopped at the back door, listened, silence. I turned on the outside light. That's when I saw it. There was something stuck to the narrow window beside the door. A small square shape pressed against the glass. It looked like a folded card, frosted around the edges. I opened the door just enough to grab it. No footprints in the snow, no drag marks, no signs anyone had been there. Inside the card was a photo of me standing at the front window of the lodge, taken from behind. I was wearing the same hoodie I had on at that exact moment. I dropped the flashlight. It hit the tile hard. I slammed the door, locked it, then ran through the whole house, making sure every window was latched, every curtain pulled open. I turned on every light and sat at the kitchen table with a butcher knife in my hand. I stayed like that until sunrise. Later that morning I walked the property again, around the shed, checked the cabins. Everything looked completely normal. And then I came back to the lodge. There was a second card. This one was taped on the inside of the front door. Same design, same blank inside, different photo. This one was me sitting in the kitchen, knife in one hand, flashlight on the table, taken from behind. Someone had been inside the house. I didn't stop to think. I just grabbed my bag, left everything else, and drove south without even locking the place up. I showed up at my aunt's house around noon, gave her some excuse about needing a change of scenery, and didn't bring up what had actually happened. My Uncle Ron sold the lodge that spring. I was working nights as a delivery manager for this regional big box chain, one of those stores that sells everything from canned soup to snowblowers. We covered the northern Minnesota region, and our central warehouse was just outside a small town called Red Bridge. Most of our crew had already headed home for the holidays. I wasn't surprised. That's how it always went. Someone had to stay behind and manage the incoming shipments, especially the holiday overflow. It was Christmas Eve, and yeah, I was alone in the warehouse. That part wasn't weird. The night crew had taken early leave, and the only other guy scheduled, a college temp named Ryan, texted that he was stuck at home with food poisoning. That left me corporate, wanted everything processed before morning. No delays. So I stayed like I had the last 3 years. There was a refrigerated trailer due around midnight. Cold stock for the post-holiday clearance bins. My job was simple: unlock the back gate, check the contents, scan them into the system, and go home. The warehouse itself was this massive, drafty beast of a place, a converted paper mill from the 50s. No matter how high we cranked the heaters, it stayed cold. I mean, you could literally see your breath if you stopped moving for too long. I kept the office radio playing low just to drown out the weird echo you get in a steel wall building that size. Around 11:30 I'd finished setting up the loading zone and took a walk around to make sure the back gate wasn't snowed in. There were drifts against the fence, but nothing too bad. On my way back inside, I noticed my gloves had stiffened up from the cold, so I threw them on the radiator in the office and poured some coffee. That's when I caught it. Aisle 17's motion light had flipped on. It was a sharp little click you could hear from the front. That aisle housed the seasonal section, Santa inflatables, LED reindeer, bins of fake snow. The lights were on a timer, and I'd shut them off half an hour earlier. They only kicked on if someone or something walked past the sensor, and those things weren't overly sensitive. You needed to be human-sized, moving at close range. I figured maybe a raccoon got in. Wouldn't be the first time. Grabbed my scanner gun out of habit. It's wireless, clunky, and technically meant for inventory, but it gives me a weird sense of security. I made my way to aisle 17. Everything looked normal at first. Shelves were neat. Nothing seemed out of place. But then I saw it. One of the animatronic elf displays, the ones meant to dance and sing when plugged in, was on. It was blinking slowly and waving. Thing is, none of the demo units were hooked up. We kept all their cords locked up at the front so customers couldn't mess with them. There was no power. The elf jerked one arm up and gave a stilted little wave. Then it froze. Right after that, the overhead lights buzzed and cut out completely. I stood there, flashlight already in hand, trying to figure out if I'd blown a fuse. I scanned the floor. That's when I saw the footprints. Bare feet, small, damp, leading away from the elf display toward the back of the aisle. The print looked clean, like someone had stepped in snow and walked barefoot across the concrete. I backed off slow. No idea why. Just instinct, I guess. Walked fast back to the office and shut off the aisle's breaker switch entirely. Then I checked the cameras. We had security feeds that showed wide-angle shots of each aisle. I pulled up 17th and scrolled back about 2 hours. At 11:10, the light kicked on by itself. A minute later, the elf display began moving. No one in the frame, not even a blur, just the elf, waving like some creepy little greeter at a haunted toy store. Then, right at 11:13, something weird happened. One of the boxed-up artificial trees in the back of the frame jumped to the left. Just like that, from one frame to the next. No movement. No one touched it. It just shifted. I kept scrubbing forward. At 11:17, something white rolled across the floor, way at the edge of the frame. I zoomed in, paused. It looked like a snowball. No kidding. Just this little clump of white sliding past the camera. That's when I started to feel it. That tight feeling in your chest when you know something's off, but you can't explain it yet. I headed back to aisle 17 slowly. The elf was still now. Just a dead-eyed grin and empty plastic hands. The footprints were gone completely. But the fake tree that had shifted on the feed, it was lying on its side, out of the box, like someone had dragged it a few feet and dumped it there. I stepped closer. Around the tree, the concrete was dusted with real snow. Thin, powdery, melting into little puddles. Then I heard it, the roll-up dock door rattling. I ran back through the warehouse, flashlight cutting through the dark. The roll-up door was still locked, but the chain? It was swaying like someone had just yanked it hard and let go. I looked through the glass panel, nothing outside. Fresh snow, untouched, not a single footprint in or out. Back in the office, the radio was still on. Silver Bells was playing, but the track stuttered. It hit the word soon and repeated it soon, 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 soon before continuing like nothing happened. I turned it off, sat there for a while. Heart doing this steady, tight thump in my chest told myself I was being paranoid. Wiring glitch, bad sensors, old building. There were 100 explanations. At 12:06, the back gate buzzer rang. I checked the monitor. A semi had pulled up, headlights cutting through the dark snow. I went out to meet the driver, a guy maybe mid-40s, no real expression. He handed me the manifest without saying a word. I opened the trailer. Something was off immediately. Instead of labeled pallets or crates with barcodes, the whole truck was packed with unbranded wooden boxes, rough cut, mismatched, stacked unevenly. No labels, no serials, nothing. I pried one open. Inside was a bundle of burlap tied with twine. I unwrapped it. It was a handmade Santa doll, stitched red felt, little button eyes, a tag pinned to its chest. He sees you when you're sleeping. I looked back at the manifest. It was blank. Just a delivery time and my name typed in the recipient field. No origin, no product list. I opened another box, another doll. This one looked like an elf, but its eyes were sealed shut with wire, thick silver twists right across the face. By the time I turned around, the driver was already pulling away. I stood there in the freezing dark, staring at dozens of boxes filled with creepy faceless toys. All different, all wrong. Back inside, I tried calling my district manager. My phone had full bars until I hit dial. Then it dropped to 0 and stayed there. The warehouse landline? Completely dead. And then, every motion light in the building turned on at once. Every aisle, every sensor. Then they started turning off again, one by one, in a slow wave from left to right. When the last light died, the radio clicked on by itself. It wasn't music this time. It was breathing. Heavy, close, like someone was standing inches from the mic. That was enough for me. I grabbed my keys and coat, locked the office door behind me, and left everything as it was. Boxes, paperwork, shipment, all of it. I drove straight to my brother's place in West Maple and told him I needed to crash for a few days. Didn't say why, just poured myself a drink and pretended I was tired of working holidays. When the warehouse reopened on the 27th, I called HR, quit over the phone, and asked them to send my last check in the mail. It was right before Christmas, the kind of time when everyone else seemed to have plans, and I was still trying to piece together what the next week would even look like. I've been staying at my cousin Joel's place, technically his basement, after moving out of a shared apartment in Rochester that went downhill fast. That's why I said yes to the job. Temporary overnight gig, nothing fancy. I found it through one of those staffing agencies that still answers the phone with, "How soon can you start?" No background check. No references needed. Just 5 nights, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. watching over a civic center about an hour outside of Albany in a town called Holloway I'd never heard of. The place was used for everything apparently. School plays, local elections, community meetings, blood drives, pancake breakfasts, you name it. But for the last 2 weeks of December, it turned into a volunteer-run Christmas exhibit. When I showed up the first night, the janitor, Dale, was already locking up. White hair, faded blue coveralls, and that look of someone who spent the last few decades fixing the same building over and over again. He barely said 5 words to me, just handed me the alarm code, walked me through which doors needed checking, and gave me a thermos full of gas station coffee that somehow managed to be both scalding and weak. I took it anyway. It was cold inside, and I hadn't thought to bring gloves. The first 3 nights were a blur. I'd do a lap every couple hours, checking fire exits and poking my head into the auditorium where most of the decorations were. The train setup was surprisingly detailed. I'm talking tiny lamp posts that actually lit up, little faux gift boxes glued under every miniature tree, even a working level crossing with flashing lights. Someone had taken it seriously. I found it weirdly relaxing to watch, like it gave the building some kind of heartbeat. The rest of the place felt hollow, like a school after hours. Long hallways, cold tile floors, the occasional hum from a vending machine that hadn't been restocked in years. I passed the time by scrolling on my phone, microwaving sandwiches, and texting Joel dumb updates just to stay awake. Still alive, no elf attacks, that kind of thing. It wasn't a bad gig, honestly, not until night 4. That shift started out the same as always. Dale grunted something about the thermostat still acting up, passed me the keys, and disappeared into the night. I made my first rounds. Everything looked the same, except the lights in the hallway by the auditorium were flickering a little. I figured it was a wiring thing and moved on. Around 3 in the morning, I was halfway through a stale peanut butter granola bar when I heard this loud metallic click. Not just a creak or pop, this was a deliberate sound, like a lock turning. I sat up. The heat made all kinds of weird noises in that place, but this was different. Sharper, closer. I got up, left the lounge, and started down the hall. That's when I noticed some of the overhead lights were off now. I hadn't touched anything, and the timers were supposed to keep them on until morning. A few sections were dark that hadn't been before. My shoes echoed more than usual, every step sounding too loud in the quiet. The doors to the auditorium were cracked open. I knew I'd closed them during my last walkthrough. Inside, the main lights were still glowing. The centerpiece tree in the corner blinked softly in red and green. It looked like a store-bought tree someone had tried to make fancier with ribbons and hand-cut paper stars. A little off-kilter, like everything in there. I walked past the folding tables, keeping an eye out for anything obviously wrong, like a broken display or open door. Then I heard a soft buzzing. I looked over at the model train display. One of the trains was moving. Just one car, inching its way along the track at a slow, steady pace. The rest of the display was still. I hadn't touched the switch. In fact, I hadn't even gone near it that night. The power cord for the whole thing ran from under the table to an outlet near the back wall. I stepped closer and ducked down. The switch was in the off position. I stared at it for a second, then reached under the table and yanked the plug out completely. The train stopped. I stood up slowly. My chest felt tight, like something was pushing inward from the inside. I kept telling myself there had to be a simple explanation. Maybe there was a backup battery. Maybe it was a mechanical delay. Maybe I was overtired. But nothing about it felt mechanical or delayed. It felt wrong. The air felt heavier than it had 10 minutes earlier. There was a breeze from the heating vent that stirred the fake snow just enough to make it look like something had passed by. I didn't want to stay in that room any longer. I left and started back down the hallway. That's when I heard music. It wasn't loud, barely audible really. But there it was. A soft, tinny melody drifting from somewhere near the front entrance. It was familiar. It took me a second to place it. Oh, Christmas Tree. I followed the sound past the reception desk. Toward the coat closet the volunteers used, the door was slightly open. Just inside, on a narrow shelf, sat a plastic radio, the kind you might take camping or find in an old garage. It had a cracked dial and an antenna that leaned like it had given up trying. The music was coming from that radio. The song was warped, slow, like someone had recorded it onto a dying cassette and was playing it back on worn-out speakers. I stepped in and picked it up. The volume knob didn't do anything. I tried turning it off. Nothing. I held the power button. Still nothing. I flipped it around and popped off the battery cover. There weren't any batteries inside. Nothing. Just an empty compartment and a faint smell of dust. I didn't know what to do with that. I stood there holding the thing for maybe 10 seconds, my brain lagging behind what I was seeing. Then I set it back down on the shelf and stepped out of the room like it was radioactive. Back in the lounge, I grabbed my coat and walked straight outside without thinking. I stood under the side awning in the snow, holding my phone, refreshing the weather app just to have something moving on the screen. I didn't call anyone. I didn't text Joel. I just stood there, breathing into my hands, counting how many minutes were left until sunrise. When Dale pulled into the lot around 5:45, I was still there, coated in a thin dusting of snow. He looked confused. "Forget your keys?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just followed him back in, grabbed my bag and left. I never did the 5th shift. I called the agency and told them I had the flu. They didn't ask questions. I didn't push my luck. I never went back to Holloway, never drove through it, never even looked it up again.